Welcome to Joyful Purpose, a podcast where we share faith-filled stories of purpose, joy, and resilience. I'm your host, Sheila Hara, and together we'll explore how faith shapes our lives, careers, and the challenges we navigate. Each episode, we sit down with incredible guests who are walking in faith, pursuing their calling, and making an impact. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Sara. Sara is a Christian, wife, mom of three, and registered nurse living in Colorado Springs. She and her husband, Matt, relocated to the Springs in 2017. A native of Michigan, she vowed never to return to snow after following Matt to Texas, California, and Arizona while he was in the Army. But God had other plans and led their growing family to settle in Colorado, where the sun at least makes the snow sparkle and melt relatively quickly. When she's not living in car lines or the laundry room, she enjoys reading, crocheting, and doing puzzles. Sara and I have known each other for the past 3 years, brought together by our children attending the same school. She is the epitome of patience and wit, carrying herself with effortless grace and unwavering kindness. She approaches everything with ease, never complaining, always steady. I'm deeply inspired by the mother, wife, and friend she is, a true Proverbs 31 woman living a quietly remarkable yet profoundly impactful life. Welcome, Sara. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad you made it, and I'm so excited to talk to you about everything we have in store. But we're going to jump in and start off with, your faith story. Faith is such a personal journey, and everyone's path to Christ is different. How would you say you came to faith, and if there is a specific moment or experience that changed everything for you, we'd love for you to share that.
Yeah, I would love to share. So I did not have a profound coming to faith story or testimony. I struggled with that for a long time because I felt like that was something that was integral to becoming a Christian. I had heard these amazing stories from other people, of their testimony and how they came to know and follow after Jesus and dedicate their life to him. But mine was more of it was a longer drawn out journey. I was raised in a Lutheran home. My parents took us to church regularly, but it was more of a check the box kind of task. There was not any personal relationship, I guess I'll say, to faith at that point. I could regurgitate a lot of information to you. I could go through catechisms and all of the different prayers that are common to Lutheran faith. It's very prescriptive, so I stand up, sit down, say these things, do it all in this specific order. You dress nice for church kind of thing, but then there was nothing in between. So Sunday to Sunday, not another thought about it. And it wasn't until I was in college, actually, and I met my now husband, who was fresh off of being a missionary in Africa for 6 months, faith at its highest level possible, and he drove me absolutely bananas. So we got along really well at work. And he just constantly called me on things that he saw. He would make comments to me about just the language I would use. And he would say, you're better than that. You're smarter than that. You don't need to talk like that. Things of those nature. So we developed this friendship. And then through the course of it, started dating. And I was just so impressed with not only his, but his family and then people in his life and his community, their personal relationship with Jesus. I remember one time my mom was at our house. This is after we were married. And Matt was on the phone with his dad, actually. And Matt only talks on speakerphone. He has to pace and he has to talk on speakerphone. He cannot hold the phone to his face. So he's pacing through our dining room, talking to his dad, having this really deep theology discussion. I don't even know what it was about. I can't remember off the top of my head. but they're just back and forth about this deep faith issue, Bible verses here and there. And my mom looked at me and she was blown away by their knowledge of the Bible. And that was the piece that was missing for me. That was not, I didn't have anyone in my life until I met my husband and then his family that had that deep personal connection. And it just really opened my eyes to what my faith could be. You know, it was something that I would have told you I was a Christian, but there was no personal relationship there. You know, I did not have any change in my life until I started seeking that out for myself, you know, through Bible study and spending time in the Word, choosing a church I wanted to go to that aligned with, you know, my values, and just really digging in and being able to make my faith my own for myself.
Awesome. And I think it's great you found Matt through the process. I think God's design is just the best. And he just set you up for, give you the best example that they could be for you to, you know, join him in his kingdom. So that's amazing. Were there any challenges during this, now that you knew what faith looked like and what you could be in God's kingdom? Were there any challenges that you faced? Suffering?
Yeah, I mean,
anything?
I think that's part of being a Christian, right? We're not promised that it's going to be easy, but God will be with us through all the challenges. The one that comes to mind the most, you know, as coming to a saving faith later in life, you know, being college age, early 20s type position. And then within a few years, I'm newly married, we're moving, then we're starting a family, developing my career at the same time. There were a lot of struggles. The one that comes to mind the most, that was kind of like a turning point for me, was around the time that we moved to Colorado. So at that point in time, I had two little girls. They were 3 and not quite 1. Had a career I loved. I absolutely loved the company I worked for. They were putting a lot of time and money into me to invest in my career track and develop me as a leader for the company. I was traveling a lot. Just my focus was on taking care of the girls and my job. But my job probably at the time took precedent over everything else. I think I was probably working 60 to 80 hours a week and trying to do all of the other things. And at the time, Matt was also working in a job he absolutely hated. And an opportunity came up for him to transition out of government contract work, which he did for a while after he was out of the Army, and to go into ministry. And he had always, that was a dream of his, was to get into ministry. So he tells me he's been applying for these jobs, got an offer. They want to fly us out to do this job interview. I was very conflicted about it at the time because I loved my job and my career track. They had big plans for me. I was fully on board with them. But at the same time, I knew my husband was miserable at his job and he really needed this change. We also were looking to get out of Arizona, and the area we were in Arizona at the time, because the girls were getting older and we were living in a more rural area, and we just wanted more options for them, more options for churches, more options for schools, more options for healthcare even, and things like that. So fast forward, he takes the job, we moved to Colorado, and I completely transitioned position. So I went from working full-time, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, in a director of nursing position for a home health agency there. My company wanted to retain me. So they let me work remotely, which this was before COVID. That was not really a thing.
Yep.
So
especially around nursing. Yeah.
Especially around nursing. Yes. I have a very unique position where I am a nurse, but I work remotely from home and I do not do patient care any longer. But so we moved to Colorado, and I flipped to a remote position where I was able to work Friday through Monday, and then be with the girls during the day. So I basically went from a full-time working mom to a full-time stay-at-home plus full-time working mom, which was great. It gave me a lot more flexibility during the week to get involved in our church. And they had a mom's ministry. They still do actually have a mom's ministry there. I was able to join that. We were able to participate in some other programs, and my faith just exploded at that point in time. And I remember Matt looking at me one day, and he just started shaking his head, and he was like, I love Colorado, Sara. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he was like, you just have this, you different. Like, I can see a difference in you. I can feel a difference in you. This transition has been amazing, you know, for your faith, for your motherhood, for your work-life balance, all of the things. And it continued to go really well for probably about a year. And then we were buying a house, and I was extremely pregnant with our third daughter. And coming off of maternity leave, I was planning to go back to work full-time in this position. There had been talks of me taking over like an even higher position within the company and being over a larger territory to help develop our clinical leaders at the agency that I was at. And my first day back, I was let go. I had a meeting scheduled that morning with my boss and then her boss to go over next steps, because there had been talks my entire maternity leave and leading up to it of me transitioning to take over more responsibilities in a bigger territory. And then the conversation was totally different. Not at all what I expected. They had nothing but amazing things to say, which I think made it super hard for me to come to terms with the fact that I was being like, oh, you know, it was conversation. You're amazing. You've been super dedicated. You're a really strong leader in our company, but we're getting rid of all of our remote positions. So this was in 2018, right before COVID happened. Yep. You know, it was a budgeting issue. They didn't feel like they had the funds to retain any remote people. They were increasing scope of work for everyone that was in person to absorb all of those extra duties, and it didn't work out. And I had a really hard time with that. I felt like God had put me in this perfect situation where I had the best of both worlds. I could be a stay-at-home mom to an extent, and I could have my career. And my husband was able to transition to a ministry position because I was making enough to support us financially. We had just bought a new home, and I had this 8-week-old baby. Everything was going perfectly, in my opinion. And then I felt like God just pulled the rug out from under me. So it was a really hard time for me during that, and really tested this faith that I had been working on building over the last year, where I felt like I had this phenomenal growth and an explosion in my walk with the Lord. And then the rug pulled out from under me, and I was like, Lord, what is the purpose of this? Like, what is going on? What are you trying to show me through this? And in hindsight, you know, looking back at everything I went through during that season, it ended up being the best thing for me. You know, I was in a headspace where I knew the Lord would provide. It was not the first time that we had been through struggles. You know, the last time we bought, actually every time we have purchased a home, somebody has lost a job. So the first time it happened in Arizona, it was Matt. We closed on our house, and a month later he lost his job. And then this time it was my turn to close on a house and lose my job. It was just a very different dynamic. I felt like I was so stripped down at that point, you know, from feeling like I was at such a high place, like in my walk with the Lord, and being so tight with him and just giving everything over to him. And then he came in and said, okay, you just had this baby, you just closed on a house, you have this career you love, I'm taking it. And I need you to trust that this is going to be in your best interest. Which it was. I have now been at the company that I'm at for longer than I was at my previous company. It is a much better situation for me, even though it's different with being able to mother my girls, and then also keep my career. I was able to walk in there and just tell them, this is what I can offer you, take it or leave it. And they opted to take it, and it was amazing. So, and just little things, where the Lord came alongside me during that period of time and showed me it's going to be okay. Like, I know you're spiraling right now, and I know you feel like I'm doing this and it's not fair or it's hurtful, but I've got this. I did not forget about you. I am not forsaking you. I have a plan, and you just need to trust it. And sure enough, he did. And it's been great for our family, and just that work-life balance. I have so much more of that, and I'm able to dedicate more of my time and energy to raising our girls, plus keeping my career at the same time, even though it looks a little bit different.
Awesome. So you're not burning the candle at both ends.
Exactly.
It felt like, with the previous one, you were working on the weekends and doing everything you can during the week. And it's probably, you just didn't get your time with the Lord. And I guess the Lord got jealous to a certain extent.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough. What I was doing, my priorities still were not right, I think, at that point in time. And I wasn't seeing that. And the Lord made sure I saw it, and that I was able to recalibrate and to go from there, with him. And it really, I really did have to lean in at that point in time. I remember we were in a small group at our church, and our community group leader kept calling me because we had just moved. I had just had this baby. She knew I was on maternity leave. We let them know when I lost my job. Because we asked for prayer and for them to come alongside us and help support us. And she kept calling, and I didn't want to answer the phone. I was just so frustrated and upset. It was not what I wanted. I'm sure I was extremely hormonal too, having a new baby. But I finally answered the phone. She was like, I just want to check on you. How are you doing? I was like, I'm not great. This is what's going on. And she was like, you know what? I just got off the phone with a friend of mine who's also a nurse. Let me call her back and see where she works, because she was just talking about how they're short-staffed. I was like, great, call her, let me know. She did say she thought she worked in a different field. I was like, you know what? I can make this work. The Lord has gotten me through all of these other things. I can transition. Nursing is very flexible. There's a lot of wiggle room within different positions there. And she called me back within 5 minutes. And sure enough, it was the exact position I needed. It was in my field, directly related to my experience. She was like, if you walk in, she already put your name in with HR, just go up there. So I did. I went up there with my resume, and I walked out within a few days, and I had a new position in line. I didn't even miss a full site. I think it was 2 weeks. It was maybe 2 weeks. So it just extended my maternity leave a little bit longer, and it's just amazing to me the way God uses those little things in your life to point out, hey, I'm here. I know you're going through this. I was spending time in prayer and in reading my Bible, but I don't think I was hearing anything from him. At least I wasn't open to hearing anything from him, so he's used these other people in my life to force me to, I'm not going to let you just bulldoze through the way you want to. I'm going to force you to look up and listen to what I have to say to you,
Yeah. Isn't that like a good parent, right?
Yeah.
always there and wanting to.
I know.
You can totally relate.
I don't know that my kids would agree with that, but
That's what every parent does that, you see your child suffering, you just want to, snap them out of it and say, hey, I'm right here. I can help.
Right.
Listen, right?
Yep.
Awesome. I think to all of this, I heard you being so obedient in all of this. I know it, suffering is part of our Christian faith, I think, but in all of it, God is still with us. And I think you've been such an amazing wife through all of that, a mother through all of that. I think incredible, inspirational Sara is what I see through all of this.
Thank you.
So I know we spoke about the big moments and how you came to faith. How about the little moments that happen every day? How do you hold on to faith in that?
That is one of my struggle areas. I tend to be a fixer. So I don't take the little things to God because they're little, and I can do that, and I can do that myself. I don't need him to bother him with these small things. So that's something I've been working on, but I find reading my Bible, making the time to do that every day and be in prayer every day helps immensely, and having that accountability from other people in your life when there are things going on that you can go to them and say, hey, this is going on. And sometimes not even going to them and saying, hey, this is going on, but just having conversation and relationship with them and them noticing things that are going on. Like with my small group leader, she knew I was going through it, even though we hadn't had a conversation. And she just persisted and kept reaching out. Hey, I'm here. What can I do for you? What can I be praying for you about? Being open to that. I was so resistant to it at the time, and I've since gotten a lot better about it. When people reach out, reaching back, because it is so, doing this life, being a Christian is so relational, and it depends on that relationship for accountability, to get through these little struggles and the big ones. Just even small things that are frustrating, to be able to say to someone, hey, I'm really having a hard time with this, so that they can help hold you up during that time and remind you of God's faithfulness.
Absolutely. I think community, not just for accountability. I think a lot of outsiders look at, Christianity as being accountable to others and why should we share our life with others. But I think it's more on the support and encouragement and the love that you get through these relationships. And I think we often forget that side of God. When outsiders think about God, they think about, when I say outsiders, non-Christians.
Yeah.
they think about God as being the Old Testament God, and bringing in fire and storms and destroying cities, right? But Jesus came to save, and he provides that relation where we can go to God and say, hey, we need help. And he's gentle spirited, and he's loving, and he's encouraging, and he's walking with you through life. And I think we often forget that side of it. And that's what he places all these people for a reason in our life. It's his divine design, right?
Yeah.
Each one of us, the way we support each other is different, and he puts in these different people at different times, in the kind of support that you need in that moment, which is amazing. How he just orchestrates all of that, I have no idea, but it's
I
amazing.
know, right?
Yep.
I know.
So
but thankfully he does, and then we don't.
Yes.
I mean, that's the whole crutch of it, is we don't have to worry about the organization and the design. He has it in hand. Yep. We just need to be faithful and obedient and glorify him in everything that we do.
Exactly. He knows the beginning, he knows what we're going through, and he also knows the end. He knows exactly how we're going to behave. That's the funny part.
Yes. I know. Just like we do with our kids. It's like, I know you think you're getting away with something right now, but I know you.
Exactly.
I know what's going on with you, and this is not,
Exactly.
Oh.
So, with that, I want to jump into our next fun segment, which is a Would You Rather segment. So, this is basically something that you should just think about for a few seconds, but talk about the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Okay? Okay. Would you rather live in a time of biblical miracles or see modern day revival firsthand?
Oh, I think modern day revival. We need it.
Why?
There's just so much, like thinking back to COVID. That is the example that comes to mind recently. Just the level of despair people had during that season and fear over everything going on. Nobody, or I don't want to say nobody, just the level of fear and despair that came out of that. I remember thinking, God's got this. I can lean into my faith. I am not worried about what is going to happen to us. Yes, it may be unpleasant. There might be things that we have to go through, but ultimately, I'm not worried. I know what is happening to me at the end of this. And that is something to be excited about and celebrate. Like, worst case scenario, I get to see Jesus. I'm not going to be mad about that.
No, exactly. I think, and a lot of people say this too, you should not be reading your book backwards. Like, don't start from the end and go to the first. Yep. But with the Bible, I love reading Revelations because I think we know what's going to happen. And God has a plan for all of us. And it's just, yes. It goes opposite to what the world says, right? And I think that
exactly
everything contrary, at least the way I think, everything contrary to what I think, when I think worldly and a contrary thought comes in, I think that's from God telling me, hey, I'm right here.
Stop. Yep.
Break your cycle. Let's talk
Snap
about
out of it. Yeah. Yep. Well, and that's the thing. Like, there is that hope and a future that's planned out for us. People just need to know about it. I think that's why I'd like to see a revival now, to see people come to know that they can put their hope in Jesus and that we don't need to be worried and scared about the things of this world because we're of another world.
Exactly. Awesome.
Yeah.
So would you rather be able to work from home forever or travel the world for work?
Oh, I am a homebody. I do enjoy traveling. I am very much a homebody, and it's getting worse as I get older. So I would love to work from home forever. I mean, that would be, I've worked from home for a very long time. It's actually been integral to like my motherhood. Even the girls, that's all they've ever known for the most part is me working at home. So I think work at home forever. Because if I was traveling, I also wouldn't want to be working. That is, I think, the hardest thing. When you travel, you don't want to be working. You want to be able to enjoy. So I'd rather work from home forever. And then when I do travel, I'm just traveling.
Yep. Would you have dinner with Jesus on earth or spend an hour in heaven getting all your faith questions answered?
Oh, dinner with Jesus on earth. I would not pass up an opportunity to have his undivided attention.
Absolutely. And we're all going to go to heaven anyway, so you
can
ask questions later.
Well, and like that question is always funny to me. It reminds me of that song. Oh, I can't remember it. It's like when we get there, I think I'm not going to care about the answers to any of the questions. Like I have them now, but once I get there, I'm going to be so in awe and just so excited and at peace. All of this is not going to matter.
Exactly. Would you rather have a lifetime of family game nights or a lifetime of uninterrupted morning quiet time?
That's a hard one.
You're allowed to say both, by the way.
I know. Oh, I can? All right. I would say both.
I think, the game nights, especially with the kids, I think the game nights are awesome.
Especially at this season, of life where they're little and they still want to play games with you.
Exactly.
And then the morning quiet time is nice. I am not a morning person, so I'd rather do the game night. I think. Oh,
Oh, let me ask. You do have kids, you're working, you
yeah.
have like your wife, and you're also participating with church and, I'm sure with the activities at school and stuff like that. So how do you find time, quiet time with God?
So it is varied. I I am not a morning person. I have tried to give that first hour in the morning to the Lord and get up. He just did not create me that way. I have found I don't get as much out of it. Because I have the luxury of working from home and all three girls are school age now and out of the house for the most part, I usually once they leave for school, that's when I will take my quiet time and I will spend my time reading the Bible and praying before I start my work day. And then I'll just make up for that a little bit later, like in the evening, so that I can get that time in. Because it's just too distracting. If the kids are here and I'm trying to read and get interrupted, I can't get into the headspace with all the noise outside of it. So, and sometimes it doesn't happen until, I take a lunch break and I'll sit and eat lunch and then I'll have my quiet time with the Lord then. But
Awesome. I think that is so good to hear because I think, again, when we think about the kind of advice we get from Christians, it's always spend that first few minutes or hours with God, the first minutes, right? And it feels like in our season, the season that we're in right now, and it might change, in the future, it's just an impossibility, right? Because I try and wake up and I try and beat the clock of my youngest and I can never do it. He always manages to beat me and wake up before me. So it's always a struggle.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, and then I did struggle with that for a long time. Just that idea of, oh, this is what you need to do as a Christian. If you're going to be a good Christian, you need to, it doesn't work for me. And I know I've talked to other moms who they do it at night and then they're up late because you get into God's word and you're really having, a great time reading through scripture and then looking into commentaries and diving deeper and doing all this stuff. You just get so engrossed in that time with him. Like, how can that be bad? Even though it is at night and it's not the prescribed way to do it, they're getting something out of it still. So after hearing that, I was like, you know what? This doesn't work for me in this season. Maybe there will be a season in my life where I will have a turn to have quiet morning time or be, cognizant enough to have that quiet morning time. But I just have found for me, this isn't it.
Perfect. I think that's great to hear because I think we often mix up religion with relationship, right? I mean, doing something the way it's been prescribed or, whoever prescribed it versus having that relationship with Jesus. I think that's the most important part, and how you do it and how you get there. So everyone is different. Awesome. Okay, my last would you rather. Would you rather have the gift of prophecy or the gift of healing?
Oh, healing. I'm a nurse.
Wouldn't you rather have prophecy then? Because you already are healing.
I know. But just that is where my brain goes, is healing. I think prophecy would be great. But I am definitely like more of a hands-on, like, let me do something practically, Yeah,
and that's how he's built you from everything you've shared. So, good job. Okay, so the next segment we're going to talk about is something that our listeners can feel encouraged with, something that they can reflect on. So what is the one piece of advice you'd give to someone struggling to find their purpose in faith today?
I would say just to persevere, to that routine faithfulness, read your Bible, spend time in prayer, spend time listening for the Lord to respond to you in prayer, however that looks, and wait on the Lord. Even if it is not a clear, I feel like I've gone through a few seasons where I haven't had this clear overarching purpose. I mean, we're not all going to be Paul, right? So making sure I am leaving it open to the Lord. I am spending time reading his word. I'm spending time in prayer. I'm spending time listening to him. And then asking myself as I'm going through, does this glorify God? Because that's our ultimate purpose, right?
Yep.
Is glorify God in all the things that we do. So, whether it's the way I'm interacting with teachers at school, or my girls on a day-to-day basis, or my husband, or at work, does this glorify God? The way my attitude about this, the way I'm approaching this, the way I'm completing this, is it glorifying to God? And that will just, consistently doing that, your purpose will work itself out, and he will make it known to you in his own time. I am not a patient person. So that is always a struggle for me, to wait on the Lord. But I have found just that routine faithfulness of day in and day out. And sometimes it is, a trudge to go through. I've had seasons where it feels like work to sit down and read my Bible and spend time in prayer and spend time waiting on the Lord to respond to me in that moment, or even later in the day. But the persistence of doing it day in and day out, and just waiting for that purpose to come through.
So, if there was a Bible verse that has been an anchor in your tough times, do you think sharing that would help with anybody listening in as well?
Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Whatever the plans, he's not out to get me. He doesn't promise I will go through this life without struggle, but he does promise to be there with me through it. And just being reminded that his plans are for my welfare. He's a good father. He has my best interest at heart, more so than I could ever comprehend. I think I know what's best for me and what the plans I can make for my welfare, but how much better does he know them than me? And just resting in that promise from him that he's got it, and I just need to be faithful.
Absolutely. Amazing. What's one simple thing our listeners can do today to grow in faith, if there's anything? I know you said, spending time with the Lord. So maybe if you want to, one simple thing.
Like, practically speaking, I mean, I know that tends to be a standard answer. Read your Bible and pray. Like, we say that about everything, which can sometimes be hard. I have found using like a reading plan I use a Bible app, and I will subscribe to a reading plan to help me remain accountable, in doing that. It gives me something kind of to check off a list, but also just so I know where I'm at with progress. I'm very results oriented. So seeing, that I'm doing that. And then I also just love listening to podcasts. So I am an avid podcast listener. And I think it helps to hear other people's their testimonies, their story, whatever they have to bring to the table. Especially like with whatever I'm walking through in that moment. I have, a few that I've vetted and looked into that I really, really feel strongly about. And I'll go and look and see, like, what do they have about this? If there's something I'm struggling with. Because sometimes, you do read your Bible, but you're not hearing what the Lord is trying to say through that. But sometimes another person explaining it or kind of branching out about that is helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is there a Bible app that you like?
I use the Crossway Bible app, and I'll go through they have a few reading plans. I usually do like a yearly one. Right now I'm doing the Bible Project's Bible in a Year.
Okay.
Yeah. And I really like theirs. They do like little explainer videos to go along with everything. So it's a mix of both, spending time in scripture, and they give context to what you're reading too.
Awesome. So my mornings, I get about maybe 15 to 30 minutes to work out and do my quiet time before I
Oh,
have to
that's not
log
a
in.
lot.
Exactly. So,
Oh,
but we do spend time in the night, praying with the kids. We make sure we
yeah.
do that every night. But in the mornings, that's about how much time I get. So I have this app. It's a pray as you go app, and it
Okay.
starts with, you know, the bells of the church, and that's usually my cue to tune in. And then
Hmm.
it's a 10 to 12 minutes where they talk about it. It has a verse and they pray about it, and then you get, at the end, a few minutes to just meditate. So it's the 555 concept where, you pray for, you read the Bible for 5 minutes, you pray for 5 minutes, and then you listen, you stay still for 5 minutes. It's that concept, but it helps me tremendously. And I and it's like manna for the day, just
Yeah,
enough for me to get through the day.
to get
But
going.
exactly.
Yeah. Well,
So
and I think that's the thing. You just have to find what works for you. I mean, there have been so many times that I've heard other people say, do this, this, and this. And I look at it and I know right off the bat, it's not going to work for me. So just finding something that will work for you and trying it, just because
exactly.
I start a Bible reading plan doesn't mean I have to finish it. I can always change my mind if it doesn't work, but just doing something, taking that step toward furthering your walk, with whatever it is. If it starts out as, reading a verse every day and then praying on
Exactly.
it, just doing something today and then going from there and waiting on the Lord, that routine faithfulness of coming back and doing it day in and day out, you will grow. I mean, the Lord will meet you where you're at and walk with you forward.
Absolutely. Just like any skill, practice. Practice it,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
So this last segment, this is called the rapid fire, and I know my
Okay.
guests enjoy this part of it, and they're
Yep.
all here just for that part. But so let's start off by saying, don't think about this. It's a rapid fire. So
Okay.
whatever comes to mind first. What's your favorite Bible verse for encouragement?
Oh, so right now, my favorite Bible verse, not necessarily for encouragement. My running joke is Ephesians 6:1. Children, obey your parents in the Lord. I teach. I'm a Awana teacher for little kindergartners through second graders, and they go through their book, and that's one of the last ones, and that's my running joke. I'm like, oh, this is my favorite Bible verse.
It's amazing.
Yeah. For encouragement, I would say Psalm 23.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What's one worship song that always lifts your spirit?
Oh, right now, I love. I very rarely have control over the radio in my vehicle these days because I have a daughter that's old enough to sit in the front seat. Actually, I have two. Two out of my three are old enough to sit in the front seat in Colorado. So they are constantly messing with the radio. But Praises by Elevation Worship and Forrest Frank right now is my jam. I do love pretty much anything Phil Wickham, or like Hillsong has a couple songs that really just speak to me, every time. Anytime I hear it, it just is very emotional. Like it just gets me in the feels right away.
So, which woman in the Bible do you relate to the most?
Relate to the most? Probably Martha. I tend to get caught up in the busyness of things. I think in this season, of just there's constantly homework and laundry and dishes. I would say I relate to her the most because I get bogged down with all of the things that have to be done as a mother and a wife and a worker for another company. But I hope that will change. This is just the season I'm in, and I relate to her strongly.
Awesome. If you could have dinner with one woman from the Bible, who would it be?
Oh, hopefully Mary.
Mary, the
Just
mother of Jesus?
Mary, the mother of Jesus. Yeah.
Okay.
To talk about all things mothering and faith and just her experience. I mean, she has an amazing story.
Yeah.
To be this young woman and to be chosen by God. Like I can't even imagine what she was thinking or what she would have felt in that moment. So that would be great to hear that.
And it was all counterculture at that point, right? So it
Right.
must have been hard for her to trust in the Lord and
Yeah.
still be the mother of Jesus.
Right. I know. And
Be
can you
honest.
even imagine the pressure? Like,
Exactly. Yep. We have it easy compared to her.
right. I know.
Okay. Esther or Ruth, whose story inspires you more?
Ruth, that routine faithfulness. I mean,
Yeah.
she puts her head down and works through it. I mean, that is very relatable to me.
Okay. What's one way you stay connected to God in a busy season?
Reading my Bible and praying. I feel like that's just my standard answer for everything. And it has to be through this season. You have to fit it in. You have to prioritize it amongst all the other things, work responsibilities, kid responsibilities, wife responsibilities, just staying in the Word and making the time for prayer, whatever that looks like, whether it's a few minutes or a longer session where I can really dive into it. Yeah.
Awesome. If there's anything that you would like to say to our listeners, any last words, what would they be?
I would say just to trust the plan. I know it's hard to trust when you don't have all the answers. I'm a person that likes to have all the answers and likes to work things out for myself. But you can get to a point if you stick with it and persevere through, to giving it over to God and really being able to rest in that and find peace in that. And I found that has been the case with my journey, and I hope that it just continues.
Awesome. Wow, what an incredible conversation, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing your story and wisdom with us today. I know our listeners are going to be so encouraged by this. Until next time, keep walking in faith and living with joy. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.